If regular soldiers were terrifying, then why did they need special forces? The galaxy trembled as the news spread across the cosmos. Humanity was no longer a species to be dismissed. A military exercise was set to unfold on the war-torn planet of Omerta, and the aliens, long regarded as the most formidable warriors in the universe, were about to face humanity's might in a way they could not have anticipated. Omerta was a world of extremes, a place where the landscape shifted like the tides of war. Its surface was cracked and scorched, scarred by the wars that had raged there for centuries. Alien species came and went, each leaving their mark, each believing they were the mightiest. But none had truly understood what they were about to face. At the heart of this intergalactic exercise stood one question that haunted even the bravest of minds in the alien empire: why were the humans so terrifying? The humans had already proven their strength in regular combat. Their soldiers, who fought with raw intensity, had made a reputation for themselves across the galaxy. But it was the special forces, a name whispered in fear across countless star systems, that truly captured the imagination of their foes. No one had ever truly seen them fight. No one had ever survived seeing them fight. Today, that would change. A contingent of the galaxy's finest warriors, aliens from across the stars, each a seasoned killer in their own right, prepared to face the humans. It was not a war, not yet, but a test. A chance to see if the galaxy's top soldiers could finally put humanity's special forces in their place. The alien commanders gathered, their eyes narrowing in disbelief as the humans, who had only recently arrived on Omerta, stepped into the training zone. The aliens had already prepared their most elite units to face the humans' best. For the first time, they would engage in a direct confrontation, a contest of raw power, strategy, and skill. The human regulars, already proving their terrifying ability, were only the warm-up. They were fierce and determined, but the true shock was yet to come. The alien commanders sneered as the special forces arrived, just a handful of men and women. How could a few soldiers, even if they were human, stand against their might? The aliens saw their own superiority in numbers, technology, and centuries of battle experience. They mocked the humans' reputation, certain the upcoming exercise would be a demonstration of their own dominance. But then, the first strike came. A single human soldier, the Special Forces operative, stepped forward. He wasn't wearing the same uniform as the regulars, nor did he carry the same weapons. Instead, he wore a black suit that gleamed with a faint, almost imperceptible hum of energy. It was his presence that silenced the room. The moment he moved, the air shifted. There was a power in his gaze, an unspoken challenge. The aliens laughed. They had their weapons. They had their technology. They had everything it took to conquer this challenge. But when the human soldier raised his hand, they realized their mistake. Before they could react, he was already among them. In the blink of an eye, an alien soldier fell, his weapon disarmed with terrifying precision. The crowd gasped. It wasn't a fluke, a lucky shot. It was a demonstration of skill, a mastery of combat that was beyond their comprehension. The alien general called for reinforcements, watching in disbelief as more soldiers were neutralized, their once unstoppable technology turned against them. The battlefield erupted into chaos. The humans, the special forces, moved as if they could read their enemies' thoughts, anticipating every move, countering every strike with an elegance and ferocity that left the alien forces reeling. The regulars, too, joined the fray, but it was the special forces who struck fear into the hearts of their opponents. They weren't just soldiers. They weren't just warriors. They were something more. Something other. In mere moments, the battle was over. The once proud alien forces lay scattered, beaten. The human special forces had taken no lives, but their message was clear: we don't fight like you. The alien commander, who had once dismissed the human threat, stood frozen, his heart racing. He realized then that this exercise was more than just a test of strength, it was a warning. What the aliens didn't understand was that the human strength wasn't just in their weapons or tactics, it was in their ability to push beyond their limits. And the special forces were the embodiment of that push. In the aftermath of the shocking exercise, the alien commanders were left scrambling. Their pride had been shattered in a way they could not comprehend. They had assumed their technological superiority and battle-hardened experience would guarantee victory over the humans, but they were wrong. The special forces had proven themselves far beyond what any of them had imagined. The battle zone on Omerta was silent now, save for the faint hum of the emergency systems and the crackling of energy shields flickering out of existence. Alien soldiers lay in defeat, some nursing wounds, others simply staring at the ground in disbelief. It wasn't just that they had lost, it was how they had lost. A handful of human soldiers, moving with a grace and precision that made even the most experienced warriors question their own abilities. The human commander's voice echoed over the comms, calm and collected. "The exercise is complete. You can stand down." But the alien commanders, still in shock, could not stand down. There was no shame in losing, at least not in the way they had, but there was something else they couldn't shake. The humans had not just outmatched them physically, they had demonstrated something more elusive, something that cut deeper than mere combat skills. The lead alien commander, a creature tall and imposing, stood in the center of the command room, a hand on his chin, his eyes focused on the holoscreen showing the aftermath. "How is this possible?" he murmured. Beside him, a subordinate attempted to explain. "They're soldiers, they don't fight like us. They're regulars, they are beyond anything we've faced before, but the special forces, they are something else entirely." The alien commander was silent for a long moment. He looked down at the fallen soldiers on the screen, his mind racing. He had witnessed the terrifying power of human regular soldiers during prior encounters, but today, his perception of humanity had shifted entirely. He had not understood the full depth of the threat until now. He turned to face his officers. "Prepare for a full evaluation. We need to understand how these humans operate. We need to understand why they're so powerful." Back at the human base camp, a group of soldiers gathered in a quiet, makeshift briefing room. Despite their recent victory, the mood was somber. The Special Forces operatives stood apart from the regular soldiers, their faces calm but resolute. They knew something the others didn't. One of the regular soldiers, a veteran who had seen countless battles in his time, approached one of the Special Forces operatives. His voice was low, carrying an edge of curiosity. How did you do it? We've been trained for years, but it was like you knew what they were going to do before they did it." The Special Forces soldier, his expression unreadable, glanced up. "It's not about the technology, or the tactics. It's about resilience. It's about pushing through every limit, every obstacle that's placed before you. It's about never thinking you've reached the point where you can't go further." The veteran nodded slowly, but he was still unsure. "But the way you fought, the way you moved, it wasn't just skill. It was like you could see the future, or something." The Special Forces soldier shook his head. "It's not seeing the future. It's learning from every failure, from every mistake. Every mission, every battle teaches us more about how far we can go. And we learn faster than anyone else. We don't stop pushing forward." The veteran's eyes widened slightly. He had heard stories of the Special Forces, but hearing it firsthand was different. The operatives weren't just warriors, they were a living testament to what humanity was capable of. They embodied the strength to overcome, to adapt, and to survive. They were more than soldiers, they were a symbol of something deeper. Back on Omerta, the alien forces were still recovering. Their commanders had retreated to their council chambers to discuss the incident, trying to make sense of the humans' tactical genius. They were frustrated, confused, and terrified. This was not a fight they had anticipated, and they couldn't afford another defeat. "This is impossible," one of the alien commanders growled. "The humans, how could they be so advanced?" Another officer, a seasoned tactician, pointed to the data they had gathered. "Look at the patterns of engagement. They are reacting before we even execute our plans. We cannot predict their movements." The lead commander slammed a fist down onto the table. "We've underestimated them. We cannot let this continue." He turned to face the others, a grim determination in his voice. "Prepare for the next phase. We will not let these humans outmatch us again. We need to understand them, their mindset." But even as he spoke, deep inside his mind, a nagging question gnawed at him: what exactly makes them so relentless? Meanwhile, in the heart of the human command center, the true challenge had only just begun. The Special Forces soldiers had proven themselves on the battlefield, but this was only a fraction of what was to come. The mission ahead would test them in ways that no war game ever could. The aliens had learned, but so would humanity. And with every step forward, the true nature of the Special Forces would continue to unfold. The alien commanders, still grappling with the aftermath of their defeat, continued to strategize their next move. They had underestimated the human military in ways they could never have imagined. The Special Forces soldiers were not just better equipped or better trained, they were something else, something that even the alien commanders struggled to define. Back at the human base, the Special Forces operatives were deep in preparation for their next mission. The room was silent except for the faint hum of technology and the soft clink of weapons being adjusted. These soldiers weren't just preparing for another battle, they were preparing for something far greater, something that would push them beyond their limits. The room's leader, a grizzled veteran who had seen more wars than most people could count, stood silently, watching his team. His face was stoic, but there was an unmistakable glint in his eyes, something that told the others he was aware of the stakes. "You all know what's at stake," he said, his voice low and commanding. "But this next mission isn't just about taking down the enemy. It's about proving to everyone, ourselves included, that we can push past anything. We're not here just to win. We're here to make history." The other soldiers nodded, their expressions unwavering. They knew the odds. They knew what they had to do. But what they didn't know was just how far their training had pushed them, and how close they were to finding out. Back on the alien side of the galaxy, the commanders were not content with simply retreating. They had started to realize that, despite their advanced technology and tactics, they were not invincible. The humans had displayed something truly unique, a depth of strength that went beyond just combat skills or technology. The Special Forces soldiers were more than just fighters, they were symbols of humanity's determination, resilience, and relentless will. "We need to understand their training," one of the alien officers suggested. "How can their soldiers move like this? It's as though they know the fight before it happens." The lead commander's expression darkened. "We've been looking at this all wrong. We haven't been fighting just soldiers, we've been fighting a way of life." He gestured to the battlefield simulations showing human combat tactics. "Their Special Forces are something entirely different. We need to know how they train, how they think. They don't operate like us. They adapt faster, fight harder, and learn quicker. It's as if they're constantly preparing for the unexpected." The alien officers exchanged uneasy glances. They had never encountered an enemy that could adapt so quickly, that could learn faster than they could process information. But they also knew that they couldn't afford to back down. "We'll send our best operatives. We need to infiltrate their training system. We need to understand what makes them tick." The alien commander's voice was cold and calculating. "Get it done. Bring back everything." At the human base, the Special Forces soldiers were undergoing a new round of training, one that would take them further than they had ever gone before. They were learning to push through their physical, emotional, and mental limits, prepared for the battle that loomed on the horizon. But their training was unlike anything the aliens could have imagined. They were in a massive underground facility, a secret place where only the most elite of the military ever stepped foot. This was where humanity's strength was forged in the shadows, where the very nature of the special forces was honed to perfection. Inside the facility, the soldiers were put through simulations so brutal, so intense, that even the toughest warriors from other planets would have crumbled under the pressure. The physical challenges were extreme, running at full speed through treacherous terrain, navigating vast obstacles, surviving in harsh environments, and engaging in hand-to-hand combat with no room for error. But it wasn't just physical strength that was being tested. Their minds were pushed to their limits as well. Soldiers were subjected to psychological stress tests, where they were made to face their deepest fears, overcome self-doubt, and learn how to make decisions under intense pressure. They were trained to work as a unit, relying on each other and trusting that no one would leave behind. The soldiers weren't just learning how to fight, they were learning how to survive in any situation, no matter how impossible it seemed. Meanwhile, an alien infiltration unit was making its move. Using advanced cloaking technology and stealth tactics, they infiltrated the human base, carefully avoiding detection as they moved deeper into the facility. Their mission was clear: discover the secret behind humanity's special forces training. But the humans weren't unaware. The special forces soldiers had long since anticipated such an attempt. Their training had prepared them not just to survive in battle, but to outthink and outmaneuver even the most advanced alien operatives. As the alien infiltrators crept through the underground facility, they triggered a hidden alarm. The lights flickered for a moment before the room plunged into darkness. A cold, calculated voice echoed through the speakers. "We know you're here." The alien operatives froze, their hands on their weapons, ready for a confrontation. But they had underestimated the humans once again. From the shadows, a group of special forces operatives emerged, silent, efficient, and deadly. They had anticipated the alien presence and had already set a trap. Within seconds, the infiltrators were neutralized, their equipment confiscated, and their mission thwarted. The lead special forces operative stepped forward, his face emotionless. "You're not the first to try. But you won't be the last." As the dust settled and the alien infiltrators were taken into custody, the humans began to understand something crucial about their enemies. The aliens were not just fighting to win, they were fighting to learn. They wanted to understand the secret to humanity's strength. And they had already begun their efforts to replicate it. But humanity's strength couldn't be replicated. It wasn't something that could be learned or copied. It was something that had to be earned, through struggle, sacrifice, and unwavering determination. And as the special forces prepared for the final mission, they knew that their enemies would never fully understand what made them so dangerous. They could never replicate the one thing that made humans truly unstoppable: the will to never stop fighting. The alien commanders had been defeated again, their attempts to infiltrate humanity's secret training facility foiled once more. But they were not deterred. They had underestimated the humans before, but now, they were beginning to understand just how resilient and unpredictable they truly were. Back at the human base, the Special Forces soldiers prepared for their final mission. The atmosphere was heavy with the weight of what was to come. They knew this would be the most difficult challenge they had ever faced. But they were ready. They had trained for this moment, and they had faced trials and tribulations that would break the spirits of any other species. They had been through hell, literally. There had been no shortcuts, no easy solutions. Every soldier had been tested to their limits, and now, with the alien threat closing in, it was time to prove that humanity's resolve could not be broken. The commander of the Special Forces team stood before his soldiers in the briefing room, a serious expression etched across his face. "We're going into their heart of darkness," he said, his voice steady but filled with the gravity of the situation. "They think they've learned everything about us, but they haven't even scratched the surface. We're going to show them what humanity is made of. And we're not just going to survive, we're going to win." That's what we do. The soldiers nodded in unison. They had been through the toughest training imaginable, but now, they would face an enemy unlike any they had fought before. They would enter the heart of the alien stronghold, where the greatest dangers awaited them. But they weren't afraid. They were fueled by the unbreakable will to protect their people and their home. Meanwhile, the alien commanders had gathered once more, this time with a new sense of urgency. Their failures were mounting, and they knew that time was running out. They had already begun to feel the sting of humanity's resilience, but they had convinced themselves that they could overcome it. They had their own warriors, elite soldiers trained to be as formidable as their own commanders, but they had been no match for the human special forces. "We need to escalate the plan," the lead alien commander said, his voice grim. "We've been too slow in our approach. They've shown us that we can't just brute force our way through. Their soldiers are too unpredictable, too quick. We need to outthink them, use tactics that will force them into submission." The alien commanders quickly devised a new strategy, one that would take the fight directly to the heart of humanity's resistance. They had already begun constructing a powerful weapon, one that would neutralize the human forces once and for all. But even as they built their weapon, they knew that their greatest challenge would be facing the human special forces in battle. "Prepare for the final strike," the lead alien commander said. "This time, there will be no retreat." Back at the human base, the Special Forces soldiers were deep in the preparation phase. They were going through every possible scenario in their minds, preparing for every contingency. The mission was not just about destroying the alien threat, it was about proving that humanity could overcome any obstacle, no matter how insurmountable it seemed. They suited up in their gear, each one checking their weapons and equipment with precision. The weight of the task ahead was evident in their eyes, but it was not fear they carried, only determination. "We've been through worse," one of the soldiers said as he tightened his gear. "Whatever happens, we'll make it out. We're special forces for a reason." His words were met with nods of agreement. Each soldier knew the risks, but they also knew the stakes. They weren't just fighting for their survival, they were fighting for humanity's future. As they boarded the transport ship that would take them to the alien stronghold, the gravity of the mission sank in. They were about to enter enemy territory, a place where no human had ever set foot. But they weren't going in blind, they were going in with everything they had learned, every skill they had honed, and every ounce of resolve they possessed. The ship's engines roared to life, and they soared through the stars, leaving behind the safety of their base and heading straight into the unknown. As the transport ship approached the alien stronghold, the soldiers could see the massive structures looming in the distance. The alien fortress was a formidable sight, towering spires, intricate defenses, and an atmosphere thick with tension. This was the heart of the enemy's empire, and the soldiers knew that once they touched down, they would be in the fight of their lives. They landed on the outskirts of the stronghold, their boots hitting the foreign ground with a thud. The air was thick with humidity, the strange landscape full of alien plant life and towering, jagged rock formations. It was a hostile environment, one that seemed designed to deter any would-be invaders. But the humans were not deterred. They had faced worse, and they would face it again. The team's leader surveyed the area. "We move in quietly, stay sharp. The element of surprise is our best weapon." They advanced, moving in small, calculated groups, their steps light but purposeful. The alien stronghold was eerily silent, as if it were waiting for them. But they weren't the first to invade it. The aliens had underestimated the humans before, and that mistake would be their last. The mission had begun, and the Special Forces soldiers were about to face their greatest test yet. They would have to rely on every lesson they had learned, every hardship they had endured, and every ounce of strength they had cultivated. The aliens had underestimated humanity once, but now, they were about to see just how far that mistake would cost them. The soldiers pressed forward, knowing that they were not just fighting for their own survival. They were fighting for the future of humanity. The Special Forces team was deep within the heart of the alien stronghold, having already encountered resistance unlike anything they had ever faced. Alien soldiers, outfitted in advanced armor and wielding high-tech weapons, fought fiercely to defend their territory. But the humans pressed forward with relentless determination, each soldier pushing past their own exhaustion, knowing they could not afford to fail. The hum of alien weaponry echoed through the corridors as the Special Forces soldiers advanced, their movements smooth and calculated. They were no longer just individuals, they had become a cohesive unit, each member anticipating the actions of the others. This unity was their greatest strength. As they moved deeper into the alien fortress, the stakes grew higher. They knew that this final push would determine the future of humanity. This was the heart of the alien empire, the source of their power, and the ultimate test of human resilience. The team's leader, the seasoned commander who had seen and led them through countless missions, could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on his shoulders. His soldiers had given everything, sacrificing sleep, comfort, and even their own personal safety to get this far. He had led them into battle many times, but this mission felt different. It wasn't just about victory, it was about proving that humanity was more than just a species. It was about proving that humanity had a spirit that could never be broken. "This is it," the commander muttered to himself, as his fingers gripped the pulse rifle tightly. "Whatever happens now, we fight to the end." The team reached the central chamber of the stronghold, where they encountered the final wave of alien resistance. Their foes were unlike any they had faced before, more advanced, better armed, and ready to defend the core of their empire. The human strategy had worked thus far, but now it would be tested like never before. The battle was fierce. Alien soldiers unleashed waves of energy blasts, while the Special Forces soldiers countered with rapid, calculated strikes. The air crackled with tension as every movement was amplified, each step taken with the knowledge that it could be their last. It was a fight beyond anything they had trained for, a fight that demanded more than physical endurance. In the midst of the chaos, one soldier, a younger member of the team, was gravely wounded. A blast from an alien weapon caught him in the side, sending him crashing to the ground with a shout of pain. His comrades rushed to his side, but they couldn't afford to stop. The mission was too important, and the enemy was closing in. They had to finish what they started. "Don't stop," the wounded soldier shouted through gritted teeth, blood staining his uniform. "I can still fight. Keep going." The team hesitated for a moment, but the commander's voice cut through the tension. "Move out. We finish this now." The soldiers, their spirits unwavering, moved forward, leaving their fallen comrade in the care of a nearby medic. Their mission was too critical to be sidetracked. They knew the cost of failure, and they would not let their brother's sacrifice be in vain. They reached the heart of the alien fortress, the command center, where the final confrontation awaited. This was where the alien commanders would make their stand. The humans had been infiltrating, outsmarting, and dismantling their defenses piece by piece. Now, the aliens had no choice but to face them head-on. Inside the command center, the alien leaders awaited them, their expressions grim. These were not just soldiers, they were the highest-ranking members of the alien empire, the masterminds behind the entire invasion. But they were not prepared for the human determination they were about to face. "We've been waiting for you," one of the alien commanders said, his voice cold and unyielding. "But you should have stayed in your safe little corner of the galaxy. You're out of your league." The human commander, without hesitation, stepped forward. His eyes were unwavering, his stance resolute. "You're wrong," he said simply. "You've underestimated us from the start." And with that, the final battle began. The two sides collided with all the force and fury of a collision between two galaxies. The aliens fought fiercely, using their advanced technology to their advantage. But the humans fought not just with their weapons, they fought with something much stronger, their will. Every shot, every strike, was driven by the memory of the fallen soldiers, by the faces of their loved ones, by the hope that the mission would be a turning point for humanity. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight to prove that humanity had the strength to face any challenge, no matter how insurmountable. The alien commanders tried to retaliate, but they were no match for the relentless tide of human strength. The humans were quick, adaptive, and resourceful, using their surroundings and each other's skills to outsmart the aliens at every turn. The battle seemed to rage on forever, but the humans refused to back down. As the battle reached its climax, the human commander made a final, desperate move. He charged toward the alien leader, his weapon raised, determined to end the conflict once and for all. The alien leader met him head-on, their weapons clashing in a final explosion of light and energy. In the end, it was the human will that triumphed. The alien leader fell, and the remaining invaders were quickly overwhelmed by the sheer force of the human soldiers. The war was over. The aliens had been defeated. Exhausted but victorious, the Special Forces team stood in the wreckage of the alien command center. The cost had been high, but the mission had been completed. The humans had proven, once and for all, that their strength was not just in their bodies or their weapons, but in their resolve. As they made their way back to their transport, the human commander looked out at the stars, knowing that this victory would be remembered for generations. Humanity had faced the greatest challenge of its existence, and it had come out victorious. After the battle, the Special Forces team made their way back to the transport ship, leaving the ruined alien stronghold behind. The mission had been completed. The alien threat that had loomed over humanity for so long was no more. As their ship soared through the stars, the soldiers, though exhausted and scarred, felt a bittersweet relief. The commander stood at the helm of the transport ship, looking out at the vast expanse of space. It was over. They had won. But the faces of the fallen soldiers lingered in his mind, each one a reminder of the sacrifices made to reach this point. "How many did we lose?" one of the soldiers asked, his voice hollow. He was staring at the flashing numbers on the ship's console, indicating the casualties. His gaze drifted to the empty seats where once his comrades had sat. The commander took a deep breath, his mind racing to find the words. "Too many," he said quietly. "But their sacrifices won't be forgotten. We carry on for them." They were not just returning as soldiers, they were returning as survivors, as heroes, yes, but also as a people forever changed by what they had endured. The galaxy had watched as humanity rose to the occasion, confronting an overwhelming force with courage and determination. And yet, even in victory, there was no joy. Only the weight of what had been lost. The journey home felt longer than it should have. Each passing moment seemed to stretch into eternity, as if the universe itself was reflecting the gravity of their triumph. The team, who had once shared camaraderie and jokes during their earlier missions, now sat in somber silence. There was no need for words. They all knew what they had been through, and no words could fully capture the magnitude of their experiences. The ship finally entered Earth's atmosphere, the bright blue planet appearing beneath them like a beacon of hope. But as the team landed, they were not met with the celebrations they had expected. Instead, there was a solemn recognition of their service. Humanity's leaders stood waiting on the tarmac, their expressions grave. They had witnessed the victory, but they too understood that the war had taken its toll. The soldiers disembarked from the ship, their bodies weary but their heads held high. The sight of Earth, with its familiar mountains, oceans, and cities, was a reminder of why they fought. It was for this home, this life, and the future of those who had never experienced the horrors of war. The commander stepped forward, his boots thudding against the tarmac as the team followed. They walked as a unified front, a reminder to all who saw them that humanity had faced the impossible, and had come out victorious. The President of Earth, flanked by generals and officials, addressed the returning soldiers. "You have all made an immeasurable sacrifice," she said, her voice filled with pride. Your courage, your determination, and your resilience have saved us all. You are not just soldiers, you are symbols of what humanity can achieve when faced with adversity." The applause that followed was thunderous. But it was the silence of the soldiers that spoke volumes. They had saved the world, but they were not here for glory. They were here because they had no choice. They were here because, deep down, they knew that if they hadn't stepped up, if they hadn't done what needed to be done, humanity itself could have fallen. As the ceremony drew to a close, the team was given the honor they deserved. But in the back of their minds, they all knew that the cost of this victory would linger long after the cheers had faded. They had faced death and survived, but they would never forget the price they had paid. The commander stood in front of the monument built in honor of their fallen comrades, his hand resting gently on the cold stone. The names of those lost were etched into the memorial, soldiers who had given everything for humanity's future. The commander closed his eyes, allowing himself a moment of reflection. "You did not die in vain," he whispered. "You fought for something greater than yourself. And that will never be forgotten." Back at their base, the team settled into a new routine. They had returned to a world forever changed. Earth had been saved, but the scars of war were visible everywhere. People celebrated their victory, but there was an underlying grief that could not be ignored. Humanity had been tested, and though they had passed, the price had been steep. But in the days that followed, something extraordinary began to happen. As humanity healed, they started to take notice of the humans who had made the ultimate sacrifice. These soldiers, though forever changed, became more than heroes. They became the foundation for a new era, an era built on the lessons they had learned in the face of unimaginable odds. Humanity began to rebuild, stronger and more unified than ever before. They no longer feared the unknowns of the universe, they embraced them, knowing that the strength of their people was limitless. The victory over the alien empire was not just about defeating an external enemy, it was about proving that humanity could overcome any challenge, no matter how great. The team, once weary and broken, slowly began to recover. They found peace in the knowledge that their sacrifices had made a difference. But their story didn't end there. They had faced the ultimate test of survival, and they had emerged victorious. Now, it was time to pass on the lessons they had learned to the next generation. The months following the mission were filled with the healing of wounds, both visible and invisible. The Special Forces team, the ones who had led humanity's charge against the alien empire, now found themselves in a new role, mentors. The war was over, but the lessons of that conflict were far from finished. Humanity's future depended not just on the victory they had won, but on how they carried that victory forward. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the team gathered at the memorial that had been built in their honor. The same place where they had stood after their return to Earth, now a permanent reminder of the sacrifices they had made. The commander, standing tall despite the weight of the years on his shoulders, watched as the younger generation arrived, new recruits, eager faces full of hope and ambition. They didn't fully understand what had happened, not yet. But they would. "We were just like you," the commander said, his voice calm but heavy with the weight of experience. He looked at each of them, bright-eyed, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. "We weren't born warriors. We were ordinary people, just like you. But when the time came, we didn't hesitate. We stepped forward. We fought. And we didn't stop until the job was done." The recruits listened intently, the silence around them heavy with anticipation. There was something about this group, something that drew their attention, made them lean in. They could feel the gravity of the moment. "Every battle we fought, every life we saved, it all came with a price," the commander continued, his voice steady. "We faced our demons, we faced death itself. But we never gave up. And that is the lesson I want you to take with you. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how impossible the odds may seem, you must never give up. It's not the battles you win that matter, it's the strength to keep going when everyone else has given up that makes you a true warrior." The commander's words hung in the air, settling deep into the hearts of those who listened. They understood, even if only a fraction. They saw the scars that marked the faces of the veterans, scars that told stories of unimaginable bravery, of fear conquered, of sacrifices made. They saw not just soldiers, but heroes who had risen to the occasion, and who now stood ready to pass on their wisdom. "The real test is never against an enemy," the commander continued, his gaze distant. "It's against your own fears, your doubts. If you can conquer those, you can conquer anything. Remember, the greatest battles are fought within." The recruits nodded, their faces a mixture of awe and determination. They didn't know it yet, but the journey ahead would be their own test of resilience. They would face challenges that would push them to their limits, just as their mentors had. The commander's eyes softened as he looked around at the soldiers who had once fought beside him. "You've done your part," he said quietly. "Now, it's your turn to teach. Lead these young ones the way we led you. Show them what it means to be human, to stand up, no matter the cost, and fight for what is right." And so, the torch was passed. The veterans who had survived the war now took on the mantle of teaching the next generation. But it wasn't just about training them in combat, it was about instilling in them the values that had seen humanity through the darkest of times. The strength of the human spirit, the courage to fight for others, the unbreakable resolve to do what is right, even when it's hardest. Years passed, and humanity flourished. The alien threat was but a distant memory, but the lessons remained. The Special Forces soldiers, once celebrated as the saviors of Earth, became legends. Their names would live on in history, not just as warriors who fought an external enemy, but as symbols of humanity's enduring spirit. The commander, now an old man, sat alone one evening, looking out over the horizon once again. The world had changed, but the essence of humanity remained the same. Through all the trials, all the sacrifices, one thing had stood above all else, the human spirit. He smiled, content in the knowledge that the legacy of their mission had been passed on. The future was bright, not because humanity had conquered the stars, but because they had learned that the true strength of their species lay in their ability to rise above adversity, to fight for each other, and to carry forward the lessons of the past. And as the sun set, the commander stood, ready to pass on the final lesson to those who would listen. No matter how tough it gets, remember this: it's not the victories that matter most, it's the strength you find when you keep going, no matter what. That's what makes us human.